I recently had the opportunity to deliver several presentations on specific steps that recruiters can pursue as a means of optimizing the candidate experience. Candidate experience. It's a concept that's been getting a heightened level of interest and attention over the past few years, and it really translates to how a candidate ultimately perceives their individual experience with an employer's entire recruitment process. Let me share with you a personal story to highlight what I mean. After graduating from college in what was truly a rotten employment climate, and by that I mean unemployment exceeded 10%, I can remember submitting my resume to a large consumer products company for an entry-level sales position. The short story is, I didn't get the job. But the thing that I remember most about this experience was that I left the interview feeling that the recruiter had treated me in a manner that was both condescending and patronizing. To this day, I can still remember the name of the recruiter. While I've never felt bitter that I didn't get the job, my experience hammered home the notion that any recruitment process should at least strive to make every candidate feel respected. So what are candidates saying about their experience with you and your firm? Hopefully they're not saying any of the following. I submitted my resume but never heard anything. Or, sending a resume to ABC Corporation is like sending a resume into a black hole. Or, once they decided I was no longer of interest, I never heard another word from them. Or, the recruiter put me on hold 3 times to take other calls. I felt like she didn't really care whether she was talking to me or talking to someone else. Or, the interview process was incredibly disjointed. One of the interviewers had the personality of a block of wood. Or, when I arrived for the interview, the person in the reception area wasn't especially friendly. It created a really weird vibe. I could go on and on. There's little doubt in my mind and plenty of anecdotal evidence to support the notion that how a candidate is handled or managed throughout the recruitment process is significant for a number of reasons. Perhaps the first and foremost reason is that hell hath no fury like a candidate scorned. It's one thing for a candidate to be respectfully opted out of the recruitment process and thanked for his or her time. It's another thing altogether for a candidate to be quote-unquote blown off or summarily dismissed from an organization's recruitment process. As a matter of fact, just the other day, a very capable and seasoned IT executive contacted me to provide an update about his job search. He admitted that he was somewhat baffled by the degree to which he was encountering recruiters who, in an initial conversation, were both gracious and forthright, but who then did a disappearing act and failed to follow up, let alone return his calls. I know this individual well. He's completely mainstream, and certainly not someone from whom a recruiter would want to hide. It makes me wonder, don't these recruiters care about the impression that they're making? The point I'm trying to make is that a candidate's perception is a candidate's reality. As recruiting professionals, we have the ability to tangibly influence how a candidate or prospective candidate regards us and the organization or organizations that we serve. We do this by putting deliberate thought into how a candidate perceives the totality of their interaction with us and our entire organization. We do this by assuring that all facets of our process are grounded in effective, informative, and timely communications. We do this by conveying empathy for a candidate's objectives and respect for a candidate's time. And finally, we do this by being cognizant of the fact that any candidate we don't hire leaves our process with perceptions about us that they will potentially pass along to others. Again, a candidate's perception is a candidate's reality. So what immediate steps can be taken to understand and enhance the overall candidate experience that an employer delivers? Creating a great candidate experience starts with being introspective about how you want to be perceived. Whether you're a recruiter, a recruiting manager, or HR leader, or a hiring manager, if you have not consciously posed or considered the following 10 questions, you're missing out on the opportunity to assess the type of experience that you and your firm are creating for candidate prospects. The 10 questions are as follows. Take a listen and see if any seem familiar to you. 1. What are my firm's goals in the area of candidate experience? How do we want candidates to regard us? 2. How exactly do candidates perceive me? 3. How do candidates perceive others in my organization? 4. What do candidates think of my firm's overall recruiting process? 5. How do candidates regard their interview experience with my firm? 6. How effectively does my firm communicate with candidates throughout the recruitment process? 7. How does my organization proactively manage candidate expectations regarding process and timing? 8. How do we close things out with candidates who will not be given an offer? 9. What information or collateral does my organization consistently provide to candidates? And 10. What metrics does my firm utilize to assure timely processing and disposition of candidate prospects? So, how many of the questions were you able to answer? If you are regularly considering 7 or more of these questions on an ongoing basis, then you are truly making a conscious effort to deliver positive candidate experiences. If you regularly consider up to 6 of these questions, then you're definitely attuned to your candidates' perceptions, but you may wish to invest additional thought into ways that you can improve their overall experience. If you've only considered a few of these questions, then you should really dedicate some time to reflect on how knowing the answers to these questions can improve your interactions with candidates, as well as how the overall candidate experience can be optimized. The key thing is this: by regularly asking these kinds of questions, you're much more likely to understand how candidates perceive you and your organization. And by getting an appreciation for the impression that you're making, you're poised to take deliberate steps to optimize the candidate experience. Better experiences, more hires. It's really that simple. This is Paul Seiker wishing you ongoing recruiting success.